17, and this is from the SAT number 17. This is the April 2019 QAS test. And let's begin. So 16 says, the passage implies that when conducting his laboratory work, Fernbach would have been most surprised by which finding? And we see that we have a paired question here, which means that we have a question from 16, and then we have answer choices from 17 that are used to support that. And we know that the best way to solve these types of questions is to start by reading the question for 16 like we did, and then going down through the answer choices for 17 and kind of looking for one of these that could, in theory, tell us something that could answer 16. So again, the question from 16 is asking for something that Fernbach might have found surprising. So what we need to do is go through the answer choices in 17, and we're going to scan for one of two things. So either we're going to find a text in here that's going to tell us explicitly, like, Fernbach would have been surprised at XYZ, or instead what we're going to find is an answer choice that basically explains this is what Fernbach believed, and therefore give us evidence for what he might be surprised by. So if one of the answer choices or one of the texts tells us about basically some expectation that he had or some sort of belief that he had, and then what we can do is just take the opposite of that and say that's what he would find surprising. So we don't know in advance what we might find for 17, so we want to keep our options open and be a little liberal in what we choose. But as long as an answer choice basically tells us something about what Fernbach believed, either something he would be surprised by or something that he would expect, then that could be a good answer choice. So let's start. So 17, let's look at A. That's 26 through 30. That starts right here. They started by recruiting a group of volunteers in their 30s, Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, and asking them to state their positions on a variety of issues, etc. So I don't think this is a great answer choice because it doesn't tell us anything about what Fernbach believes, either something he would be surprised by or an expectation that he had. Instead, what it does is it introduces basically the methodology or the design of the study, and it tells us about the volunteers, but really nothing about Fernbach unless we really, honestly, no, nothing about Fernbach. So we can't choose that one. We should get rid of A. Then we have B, which is lines 34 through 38, and let's go up. That's going to be right here. This says, then the volunteers were instructed to write elaborate explanations of two issues. If the issue was cap and trade, for example, they would do this, blah, 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 and so forth. So again, this doesn't tell us anything about what Fernbach believes, either something he would be surprised by or an expectation that he has. Instead, it continues explaining less so the design of the study, but continues to explain basically the execution of the study, what the volunteers were asked to do, what they did, etc., but nothing about Fernbach. So I'm going to eliminate B. Then we have C, which is lines 39 through 42. Where is that? That's right here. They were not asked for value judgments about the policy or about the environment or business, but only for a highly detailed description of the mechanics of a policy in action. So what this does is sort of clarifies what the volunteers in the study were asked for, but again, we see that nothing about Fernbach is being mentioned. Nothing, again, that we might tell us about what he might find surprising or something that he might find unsurprising, an expectation that he had. Instead, this is basically just sort of clarifying the experiment that the scientist did. So for that reason, it's not a good answer choice. I would get rid of C as well. And that's going to leave us with answer choice D, which is citing lines 44 through 49, which is right here. Let's be honest. No, here. Fernbach's idea was that such an exercise would force many to realize just how little they really know about cap and trade, and confronted with their own ignorance, they would dampen their own enthusiasm. So basically here, this is Fernbach we're giving an opinion, or basically we're told about what Fernbach believes. We're told something that he believes. And his idea is that such an exercise is going to force a lot of people to realize that they don't really know a lot about these issues like cap and trade. And then once they're confronted with their own ignorance, they're going to dampen their enthusiasm. So this is an expectation that Fernbach has for the study. He thinks that those who have extremist positions, when asked to sort of discuss and asked to basically break them down and talk about the mechanics of the policy, that when they do that, they're going to realize, like, dang, I don't really know anything. Like, I'm pretty ignorant about this, and that's going to dampen their enthusiasm. So because this is his expectation, anything that's going to be the reverse of that would be something that he would be surprised by. So I think he would be surprised if basically doing this exercise didn't make people lose enthusiasm for their beliefs, or something along those lines. So let's continue from there and see if we find an answer choice that will match this. So let's start with A. A says that Fernbach would be surprised if no link was found between the complexity of an issue and the strength of the volunteers' positions. So this would only be true if Fernbach had an expectation that there would be some link or some connection between how complex an issue was and how strong people's positions would be. So basically, this would be if Fernbach believed that the more complex an issue was, right, as you increase in the complexity of an issue, that people's opinions are going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. But that's nothing that the text tells us, the one we just looked at, and there's nothing that the passage tells us that he believes in this connection. So I don't think we could choose this as something that he would be surprised by. B says that Fernbach would be surprised if, after volunteers were asked to analyze a complicated political issue, their understanding of it did not increase. So let's think about this. So for this to be true, Fernbach would basically have to believe that after you ask volunteers or after you ask people to analyze a complicated issue, that their understanding of it is going to increase. So he would have to believe that basically simply analyzing an issue is going to make your understanding increase. Maybe that's plausible, and maybe that actually is something that he believes, but nothing in the passage or the text indicates that this is some expectation that he has. And the text that we just looked at doesn't talk about this at all. It doesn't talk about a relationship between analyzing complicated issues and understanding those issues. So I would get rid of B. C says that when volunteers were asked to list their reasons for endorsing a particular policy, their views were generally unaffected by the exercise. So for this to be true, we would basically have to have evidence that Fernbach believes that when you list your reasons for endorsing a policy, that your views are affected by the exercise. And this is not a belief that Fernbach has. So listing the reasons is going to be concerning the second experiment. And basically in the second experiment, that's exactly what happened, is that people listed their reasons for endorsing a view, and we actually found that their beliefs didn't change. But we're not told anything about what Fernbach expected or what he thought he would find in this experiment. I think that when we're introduced to it, the only thing that's said is, let's see, I don't know. All it really says is that he just wanted to conduct this second experiment to find out, to find if there's a difference, right, between just listing reasons and having to explain the mechanics of something. So again, basically nowhere in the passage, and especially nowhere in our text, do we have this idea that Fernbach believes that if you list your reasons for endorsing a view, that your ideas are going to be changed drastically. So I think we can get rid of C. And then we're going to choose answer choice D, or at least we're stuck with answer choice D. Let's see if it's good. And this basically says that when volunteers were asked questions about complex issues, those with the most extreme views were found to have the best overall understanding of them. So for this to be true, Fernbach would have to believe that the people who have the strongest issues, or the strongest beliefs about an issue, when you ask them questions about it, they actually have the best knowledge and the best understanding of them. Which, again, what we looked at from D is not something that Fernbach believes. Fernbach really does believe that he thinks that the people who have the most extreme positions are actually the most ignorant. So he would definitely be surprised if in turn it came out that those with the most extreme views had the best overall understanding of them. Because as we saw in lines 44 through 49, he basically believes that they're going to realize here how little they really know, and then they're going to realize that they are confronted with their own ignorance and dampen their enthusiasm. So that's his expectation. So if something like this happened in answer choice D, he would be surprised. So we should choose answer choice D as our correct answer for question 16, and answer choice D as our correct answer for question number 17.